Welcome to Chaos2Cured podcast. You're here with Jeffrey Freed and Kirk Patrick Miller. This is actually our second attempt at this. We worked on this earlier in the week, and there was just technical issues where it was lost. And it's a subject I'm really passionate about, and it's going to be a hot topic issue. So, controversy is always good for, I guess, clicks. So please feel free to share it. But we're just going to jump into an issue of anxiety and actually utilizing microdosing to come off of benzodiazepine. So that's going to be the show. I'll find a title for it later, but Jeffrey is going to interview me. So I'm going to hand everything over. Jeffrey, just shoot away.
Yeah. First thing is anxiety is one of the worst things that a human being can endure. And so many of the people that I work with, virtually all of them, because they're all on the spectrum, have terrible anxiety. That's actually the most debilitating symptom of autism. If we could erase that, life would be good. And anything that could help those folks with that anxiety would be a godsend. So, Kirk, describe what it's like to have an anxiety attack, because most people don't know what it's like. Give us a description of what it feels like and what you look like, and just talk about what it feels like to be in the midst of a panic attack or a case of severe anxiety.
Absolutely. People that know me know I've been very open about struggling with generalized anxiety and OCD, and I've tried everything. So I tried beta blockers. I've tried antidepressants. I've tried, benzodiazepines, literally everything. The scary part about anxiety is, as you mentioned, a lot of people don't know what it always looks like or feels like. For me, it's absolutely crippling. So when there's an anxiety or panic attack, the world feels like it's falling inwards. Honestly, a lot of times I will freeze. There's sometimes a feeling of inaction because everything is so overwhelming. So I'm just sitting there staring at the wall. And sometimes that's actually panic for me, is an inability to actually even function. Other times, it comes out as aggression. Every once in a while, I'll lash out for no reason. And what I would tell people, it feels like, to me, very similar to what you'd feel if you gave up hope. It's like everything's wrong, everything's bad. It keeps coming at you. I don't have enough time. I can't catch up. I got to get this done. I have this, I have this, I have this. All these, I don't have enough money. It just cascades, snowballs down a hill. And we've all had, everybody has experienced anxiety, right? So what I'm talking about is anxiety that is so bad that you break down in a store, at your work, in a relationship. You can't function to go. For me, it's very, very difficult to go through Costco or a shopping center. Costco has huge aisles, but there's so many people and it's all cement floors. So I hear like all the rattling of the carts. It's just noise everywhere. And oftentimes it's hard for me to actually even put myself in those situations. I have high enough sensitivity issues, and that's a separate issue, but it adds to the anxiety. So to me, what I would tell people, anxiety often feels like I never have enough time. There's no way to get things done. There's no hope.
How
So
about the physical symptoms? The actual physical symptoms, what are they like?
So the physical ones, definitely heart pounding, sweating, um, you know, inability to sleep. And when you're constantly worried, you're up, you're burning energy. So your body's wearing down, weight loss. There's all of these physical things, hyperventilating. A lot of times, people will get to the point where they're panicking and they actually need to slow down just how much oxygen they're taking in. So panic attacks are on a physical level extremely uncomfortable, and it comes at you so fast. It'd be like if 300 people were around you all throwing snowballs. that'd be a good image, right? It's just like there's nowhere you can look. Everything is hitting you. And that's what a panic attack feels like. And that's why when you have one at work or at school or in a relationship, things fall apart. And that's why I sought out, treatment. And, for over 20 years, I've been on a benzodiazepine. So, I've been looking for answers. It was the only thing that helped.
Tell people what the benzo, whatever that word is. Tell them what, because not everyone will know what that means. What? Give
So
me.
absolutely. Benzodiazepines are drugs that, to simplify it, affect the sympathetic nervous system. So our fight or flight nervous system, as a gross oversimplification, but it helps the body do that. It most commonly people know like Xanax, they know Valium. Those are well-known names. Those drugs are often avoided by practitioners because of their, well, what I have faced, dependency. So my body definitely needs the medication. If you come off it, you can, and this is why you always want to work with a doctor before discontinuing medication, but you can die from coming off benzodiazepines. So you have to do it professionally and correctly. The problem with coming off of them in the past is not only do I get the physical withdrawal symptoms, but the anxiety is doubled, tripled. The longer I'm off it, the more I go off. My body has stopped. It was used to having a medication take care of that. So when there's not a medication in the body slowing everything down, keeping me calm, you can imagine the panic attacks that are already kind of innately, I guess, wired into my brain just become way worse. So it's extremely excruciating to come off. So the benzodiazepines are the highest class, in my consideration, of what you're going to see most physicians prescribe because of their risk of addiction and dependency. And then if people overuse them, suppression of breathing, they can die from overdosing with it too. So it's a very dangerous medication. The reason I took it is the alternatives were
Worse.
not being able to function. Yeah, I mean, really an inability to function in society. So there was no choice.
Wow, that sounds pretty bad. You have done some microdosing, and you say that it has helped you. Give the audience some more info on that. What the effects have been, side effects. Just talk about that. A lot of people want to know about it because microdosing is beginning to be looked at by doctors for treatment of anxiety and depression.
Absolutely. So microdosing, and you're spot on. It's using psilocybin, which is found in mushrooms. There's other types of psychedelic treatments they're looking at, but the one I am using myself is microdosing, with around, I did a case study. So what we're trying to do is keep track of it. So 100 to 300 milligrams is what I was taking per day. And at that same time, I was not discontinuing, but titrating off the other medication. So what I can tell people is that, people that doubt the usefulness of this medication have no idea. What I can say is that I've tried everything to come off these benzodiazepines, and nothing even helps remotely with the mind. So I am now on my second week of withdrawals. I dropped around 2.5 milligrams. So, that's over a 10% reduction of the benzodiazepine, which is huge. And so my body was not liking it. So my all my muscles locked up, muscles I didn't know exist, started hurting. It was very, very uncomfortable. I had a very difficult time sleeping. But what was so different, and this is why I can vouch and I know the microdosing works, is that my mind was not on fire. I'm calmer than I've ever been. I'm enjoying life, even though I'm physically miserable. So to me, this is something that every doctor, every person dealing with, if you're dealing with anxiety, you're dealing with PTSD or treatment resistant depression, the very first question you should have for your doctor is, what do you think of microdosing? Work with your doctor. But it needs to, part of the reason why I really wanted to do this show is because, I've always been a big advocate of people being able to utilize whatever tools are in existence without shame, without stigma. So whether it's a pill, whether it's psychedelic mushrooms, whether it's medicinal marijuana, as long as it's done correctly and you're living a better life, I am 100% behind it. And even with the benzodiazepine, I would like to state on the record that even though I'm going through, I'm not going to mince words, I'm going through hell coming off of it. I would not have survived without it. So for all the doctors that are like, hesitating to prescribe it, really look at the circumstances of the individual because, there wasn't microdosing. Those things were illegal. And in Colorado, you still can't buy or sell them. So, it's legal to possess. So these were not options for me, but they are options for a new generation. And there was something you asked me in the last show, and I just want to jump to that, before I get back to you. And you had asked me, do I think there's an increase in anxiety?
God.
And
Yeah.
you already know the answer is yes. And what I can attest to is, it used to be very rare for my students to have pretty severe anxiety issues, or my clientele who I was working with. Anxiety was maybe, 2 out of 10. I would say it's the exact opposite now. It's 8 out of 10. Yeah, it's
horrifying. And I think
almost all of them. Would you agree in what you've seen as well?
yeah, it's a massive increase, and the environment is causing it.
Well,
Talked about the
yes.
plasticity of the brain when you expose people to constant stimulation everywhere, their phone, their friends, the media, everything is stimulation. It's hard to let down. And if you're already predisposed to anxiety, this is the perfect environment for it to flare up and stay flared. Yeah,
Thrive
every
even.
everyone seems to be depressed and on antidepressants or anxious or both, and no one's really talking about it. It's a slow, subtle thing. It creeps up on you, but 2 out of 10 to 8 out of 10 doesn't sound too subtle. We need to change.
No.
What do you think, Kirk? Just talk
Well,
some more. Let everyone know what it's like.
I mean, honestly, there's just no reason for every single person that I'm working with to feel like there's no way they can get out of debt. There's no way they can get out of this. There's no way I can do this. I mean, it so much fear, and so many of the individuals that I work with are terrified about doing anything wrong because it's like their entire future hinges on every moment. I mean, and then you have social media. I have to have enough likes. I have to take the right picture. I have to. There is just, like you said, the environment is just perfect for it. I do think there's a possibility. It's recorded. There's a lot of medical information on people that have been infected with COVID talking about higher levels of anxiety. We know that is actually a side effect of having COVID, whether the vaccine or, I don't even want to get into that debate. But what I can say is that we know it's virulent enough and its R naught number is high enough. Every single person on the planet has probably have it. So if it increases even in, say, like 2 out of 10 people, if it hits every single person in the world, we're going to have a 20% increase in anxiety just from COVID. So I think there's external factors. I think there's a lot of pressure. I think COVID really did, change some dynamics. So, and not just the virus, but even our social interactions. But with anxiety being so high, you mentioned, neuroplasticity. my hypothesis is that the microdosing induces a hyperplastic state. And the reason why I'm able to adjust to the anxiety is because I've already learned some of the tools. And here's a key part, a key takeaway. So microdosing, if your brain is more plastic and more malleable, then honestly, you can change a lot about your life. Things that you're not liking, things you're frustrated with. You know, there's there's also some bad habits we can get into, or some bad things that we can do. So this is where, like, if I were going to suggest, somebody look into this, talk to your doctor first, make sure there's no that we need a lot more studies, number one, but make sure there's no like medication, contraindications, and then look for a therapist. Make sure you have the right cognitive behavioral therapy techniques and tools, meditation and stuff before you dive into it, because it's not a magic pill. There is no such thing. If it makes your brain a little bit more malleable and able to move past trauma, to push past depression, I've seen it do miraculous things with treatment resistant depression, like 2 years of treatment resistant depression gone in 3 weeks. That was spectacular. So I've seen what it can do. The key thing is all of these people were properly brought through a protocol that is literally being supervised for medical purposes. So if everybody does it the right way, we can avoid having some problems, and some unintended consequences. So there are unknowns because of the lack of information involved, but we do know, and this is where people can jump back and listen to our our podcasts on the connection of time and anxiety and the perception of time. And we know that it affects some areas of the brain, and those specifically to do with perception of time, the prefrontal cortex, it lights that sucker up. But it almost across the board, everyone has reported a feeling of more time, an over exaggerated sense of time. So it fits in with our hypotheses of time being directly tied, or our perception of time being tied to anxiety. I 100% believe it. And the critical flicker fusion frequency that we've mentioned before means people are taking in too many, images per second, raises anxiety levels in duress and stuff like that. That's when we take it more. There are some studies that exist that show autistic individuals, those on the spectrum, have a higher CFF. They actually have a higher critical flicker fusion frequency. So the idea is, if this is something that can help with that, it could actually be something not just used for anxiety, not just for, as treatment resistant depression or PTSD. It might be able to be used for little things like learning, like fears, dealing with, phobias. I think there's a lot of potential, and I think people really need to get out there and research it and take it seriously, which is why I'm taking a professional risk even talking about it. It's still not necessarily something that's not stigmatized. There's a lot of stigma attached to this particular medication due to the 70s. You had a lot of experimentation with psychedelics, and so the view of them is very different than what the reality is. And that's what I would tell people, is you really shouldn't notice anything if you're taking the right dosage. I noticed maybe a little tingle and some heat in my skin, but that's it. I really didn't notice much. So I think it's absolutely worth exploring. And for me, the proof is in the pudding, because there are very few people who've been on benzodiazepines as long as I have, that are coming off, and every single person will tell you it's absolutely horrible, mentally and physically. This is not so bad mentally. So that speaks volumes. So I definitely think it's a treatment worth exploring. And I hope that pharmaceutical companies and, educational facilities, like I know Johns Hopkins has done some studies. I hope they continue to do so without bias. A lot of people go into the research fields, and there's already a honestly, in my opinion, a confirmation bias on certain medications because, that's what we learned. So some of those things are hard to let go. So I want it to be done right. And that's one reason I want to do this show. Um, and, and Jeffrey, as you know, with so many people feeling anxious, with, suicide skyrocketing, there needs to be something. And I don't see more psychiatrists, graduating fast enough to deal with the problem. So for me, you look for every tool in the box, whatever it is, whatever's available, utilize it. So that would be I probably even close on that.
You taught me a
It's
lot.
good. Huh?
You taught me a lot. I've just been listening with bated breath. I've learned a lot. It's also pretty, I guess the word would be touching when somebody can describe, as you did so well, what it actually feels like, so that other people can relate to it. I can't relate to it because I don't have it. I have a lot of anxiety. But boy, the way you told it, the way you described it is also the description of so many of my clients. Again, I just work with people on the spectrum. They're not like severely autistic, but they're high functioning or middle functioning, and they get so anxious. All of them, not there's no exceptions. They can't talk. They can't turn their thoughts into words. They freeze, and they all describe it as a sickening, horrible feeling. So I applaud you for wanting to talk about it. And again, I learned a lot. Thank you.
Oh, well, thanks for asking great questions. It's a fascinating subject. And one of the most interesting things is I know of one contraindication, which is lithium. So having been somebody who's been on lithium shut everything down. This feels very much like it opens everything up. It's like the exact opposite treatment. And for me and for my mind, it's, I've heard all the descriptions and the other stuff. And in the past, I took, high doses for recreational use. That's not what I would advise. But what has been stunning is to actually have hope of getting off of benzodiazepine. Yes, I'm having physical discomfort, but I think I can kick all these, and I could probably do it in a year. And that's off of 20 milligrams every day of diazepam. So that's a huge
Wow.
accomplishment. And that's also after 20 years of higher doses too. So,
Wow.
this is something that it's big for me. I really believe in it. And I only advocate things that I have personally experienced and know work wonders. It won't work wonders for every single person. You do have to have the right mindset. You do have to have the right, I think
Symptoms.
guidance and symptoms. Yes, it's not going to be for everyone. I do think, and we can do this on a different show. I do think that microdosing for ulterior options will become something in the future. But that's for a totally different show. For right now, the medical uses are far more interesting and needed. Anxiety is too high for everyone. And honestly, we need some answers for too many people that are close to, well, what you'd call despair. We're at a breaking point, and I think society needs some help. So I'm hopeful this is something there. Should we leave it there?
Yes, we should.
Okay. Thank you for always being there. You've always been a great friend, and a teacher and a guide to me. So it's greatly appreciated. I'd love doing this with you. To everyone out there, thank you for listening and always giving us great comments and questions so we can guide you on your journey too. So take care, and I hope everybody has a very happy holiday season and a great new year. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to Chaos2Cured podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please share it with everyone you know, and definitely like, follow, and subscribe. Certainly leave a comment if you'd like. Let us know what you'd like us to talk about the next time. Also, in our show notes, there should be direct links where you can follow us on our social media, as well as reach out to us directly. Thanks again, and have a great day. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed on Chaos2Cured podcast are the speaker's own. All discussion is based on our own experiences. We do not and cannot guarantee the accuracy or completeness of any information. Chaos2Cured podcast cannot give medical or health advice. All discussion is based upon our personal experiences and meant for general and educational purposes. This podcast is not a substitute for professional help or for diagnostic purposes for yourself or another. Chaos2Cured podcast always encourages you to consult an appropriate professional.